So continuing along that, going back to kind of that path of like faith meets theater. So what is one way that you see God in theater, whether as a director or when you were acting in high school or just watching plays? Like, what's one way that you see him at work?
For sure, in the characters that my students play, they, when we first do our table read of a show, and they're like, "Oh," now they're really worried about characters, but but they would read this character and they're like, "Oh man, that character is a bad person." They do awful things. And we'll kind of just talk about shows at a later time, like more specifically, but one of the characters in a show, she at the end ends up killing her daughter and then killing herself in a weird way through a ghost fancier. It's odd. So she actually was one of my students who went off to do theater in college, and she just finished her freshman year. And she played this character, and I remember she was always like really gung-ho to put the work in and the effort in, but I'm sure that her and everyone around her was kind of like, "Oh man, this character is so bad." Her name was Hester Swain, is the character's name, from By the Bog of Cats. And you just, I don't know, it's as you work, feel like there's these characters, and as you work through their story, you start to kind of see where they lost faith, and then you just want to like pray for them, and you want to pray that they get that back, even though that's not a real person. You really feel for them. And she said that by the end, she was sad to say goodbye to that character because she had worked on her for so long, and she really felt like they were together. Like she was almost like a friend that she was trying to help, in a weird way. And so I think there's that aspect. There's also, we did Flight, and one of the biggest things about Flight was about the kidnapping it was about Charles Lindbergh, but in that show his baby is kidnapped,
right,
and because it was in real life,
yeah.
And I just wanted to pray for that family all the time. Like I wanted to pray for that baby, and I wanted to pray for him and his wife, and because you're thinking, these are real people. Like they really had their baby kidnapped and never saw that baby again, or saw it, like when they found the remains. And just to, man, there's nothing more powerful than realizing that you're playing someone that was real and they really went through those things, and you're saying their words. And there was a point where he's saying like a speech that Charles Lindbergh actually said, and he's saying this speech, and it's really, really powerful. And so I think that it's that God, I tend to do a lot of historical dramas. I'm really attached to those historical dramas, and like coming of age shows and those type of family shows. And so I just really think that he shows himself in characters, and the students are able to feel that when they're playing those characters, and they have a lot of empathy for them. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. Have you seen that that process of taking on a character and empathizing change any of the students? Like, have you seen any actual character change in real life?
I think they, I do. I think you can become more empathetic with everyone around you. There's a lot of people in this world who are suffering and hurting and who need the word of God. And, when you have been able to portray that and portray that struggle and go through that, I think when you're out of it, then you relate to it, and you can relate people to that. Oh, that person is just like this person, and what they need. And you also see there's that redemptive side where they did bad things, and so this bad thing happened to them, and so there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and I do think that they learn them and then take that with them outside of their characters. And the person who played the student who played Charles Lindbergh, there's a scene in Flight where he what is that called? Where he I can't remember any of the terminology, but he basically had was unaware of the atrocities that were happening in Germany. He almost didn't believe them, and so he kind of stood up for the German government, and people thought that he was a
Nazi?
No.
Oh,
sympathizer.
Sympathizer.
There we go.
Yeah. Nazi sympathizer.
Nazi.
Put it together.
Together, we are one person. And there's a scene in the show where he goes back and he goes to one of the concentration camps after the war, and there's which is funny because the girl that played this particular prisoner was Hester Swain in the play I just told you about. But anyway, and he goes and she's telling him what she went through, and I could see that they can only work on those scenes for so long. It's like he worked on it, and then it was so hard of a scene for him to work on. And it's nothing like physical. It's not like he was killing anyone or anyone was killing him. It wasn't that. It was really, he was going and seeing this person. And that scene was really hard for that student to work on. And he would cry, and it was, as a director, you're like, yes. You feel for their hearts, obviously, but you're like, that's what I want to see.
Right. They're bleeding. I see blood.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they learned some really, really great lessons. Yeah.
Do you have like a way to address kind of self-care for the actors if they're going through a scene like that, or like how to have compassion for themselves? Or
I usually try to break them out of anything. I don't try to send them home right after they've done something like that.
That's
so either I talk to them or make sure they're okay, and then we I'll start talking to them about something else, and just to get them to. And I have been approached about that. Sometimes we're working on these scenes, like that one is a kind of a different one, but sometimes we're working on these scenes. Have you ever worked on a death scene and then y'all are just laughing?
Like, I don't know.
Maybe it's a student thing.
But I've heard that's kind of normal. Like in dramas, everybody's laughing backstage. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of like you have to talk about really silly stuff when you're doing this. Like, no, your arm isn't the right way, or you know what I mean? Yes. And so so a lot of times it might be really sad, but there's also these moments where you're like, you've got to get it looking right. And so there's some laughter sprinkled in, and it's not to, that's just kind of part of acting. So, I don't try to harp on it a whole lot.
Yeah.
Just because more breeds more. Do you know what I mean? Like if it's, if you're just really talking about it and talking about self-care and all this stuff, then it's kind of just like, oh, I'm going through something type of thing. So I just try to just end the day with something positive and then let them go. And usually they all go out to eat afterwards or something.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
exactly.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So then we talked about like how you see God in theater. So what do you think is one challenging aspect of being a Christian in the theater world? Or you talked about film world too, so that could also be something you want to talk about. I don't know. Whatever strikes you.
I wonder if things have changed now, and as the world is kind of changing, right, with the Me Too movement, and there's been a lot of political talk and religious talk and all sorts of, and feminism and all of that. I I do think that now things are changing even for Christians. I think that I would feel 100% comfortable, and maybe I don't know if it's my age now versus being an 18-year-old going into college, but I would feel totally comfortable going up to a professor and saying, I don't feel comfortable auditioning for this show, or if I do, can you cast me for this kind of role, or whatever. I think my kids would do that, and I don't know if that's just kind of the type of students that I have, or if it is kind of the change in times where people are a little bit more sympathetic to different situations and a little more understanding. But back in the day, whenever I was in college and whenever I had graduated and gone into film world, there's no room for anything like that. I wasn't really trying to, preach to anyone when I was doing film work, but the others, I mean, I never would have even tried. I feel like, even though that's kind of what our calling is, I would have lost my job, So I think that's what kind of got to me about that. I remember I was really sick. I was on set one day and I was really, really sick. And I think I had a kidney infection, but I didn't know that that's what I had had. And so I was taking Tylenol. And have you ever had a kidney infection? They're awful. And you're sweating and you are shaking and you've got chills and you're very, very sick. Like, you probably look like death. I'm sure it was bad. But I could take Tylenol and it would make me better for a little bit. And so I went on set and I could, for whatever reason, I had to leave. Like, I couldn't make it through. Like, I needed to go to a doctor. And I remember like stumbling into, like a doctor's office and being like, help me. And so I let them know I was going to be out for the next like 2 days, I think. And so I was taking antibiotics, and I remember calling them and they were like, okay, well, you don't need to come in at all. Like, you've been replaced. And I was a production assistant for a film. And I did like that. Like, you just done. Your job is done. And I think that's what I mean when, it's kind of cutthroat and you understand that like costs them money maybe, or I'm sure there's like all these other kind of bigger reasons, but it's those kind of experiences where God is just not there at all. Like, he just wasn't anywhere. Like, I just could not, I don't know. That was kind of a harder experience for me. Not that particular little thing. I mean, that was, but that whole, like, my kind of whole journey of being a part of different film projects. And
this was in Austin? Or?
That was in Austin. Okay. Yeah. It was, I guess I shouldn't say the full name, but it was a film that was being shot here, and it had some pretty notable people in it. And yeah, it was just so, I don't know. I really feel like I would have been let go if I had, talked about religion, or if you're also seen as like weaker. There was also that like where you need to be really hard and you need to be really tough, and the things that we would be doing, like standing outside in the pouring rain, like waiting for your actor to come out of their trailer so you can like lead them to somewhere, and just that kind of things where you were just like so gross and drenched and disgusting and worn down. And but if you were anything less than that, then you wouldn't, I would never have been in that position to begin with, And so I do think that there are aspects of film and theater where it really needs more faith, because, no one should have to kind of go through that, I guess.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was like the person wasn't taken care of. Like,
right.
like
Yeah.
the love wasn't there to like take care of each
Yeah.
other. It was like, you are someone to be used to do this
Yes.
job. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It was,
Okay.
it was,
Great
and to
associate.
even get the job, you needed to be, you know, hard as nails type of person, which I can certainly be. But, you know, you want to know that if you're sick, and you have, I mean, I went to the doctor and you have a doctor's excuse. It's that thing that's missing from like normal everyday life where I can like call in sick and be like, hey, I got to call in sick, you know?
Right.
So, and it might have just been that particular like situation or that particular film. I did some other like extra work and this, that, and the other. And that wasn't awful. You know what you're getting. You're going to be there all day long. It's going to be a long day. But anyway, yeah, there's like flies.
I know, yeah, I saw that or something.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I don't have any more questions, but is there anything else that you have on your heart that you want to share?
No, I hope this gave a slight glimpse. We didn't really know what this was going to be like, so here it is.